Hey everybody, it is I, MisterSkids, and it's that time again. Time to cover everyone's favorite heavy metal red panda, Retsuko. Not that there are that many to favor, of course. Seems like she has a bit of a monopoly on that. Season 2 came out for Aggretsuko, and after taking a little while to sit down and watch it, I found myself loving it just as before. In fact, I even dare say that this one outdid the previous season. And if the review scores are anything to go by, I'm not the only one. Retsuko was brought back once again as the writer and director of the show, bringing his great ideas to the table and even raising the ante a bit from the last season. The writing has become a lot smoother since the previous installment, making the show flow easier from episode to episode. Plus, they felt far fuller and packed with content. It was hard to believe that they were only 15 minutes long. I could have sworn I was watching a full series. And it kinda reminds me of Steven Universe in that regard. The narrative wasn't the only thing that got an update. The animation sure did get quite the budget inflation. Everything moves more fluidly and bouncy, giving weight to all the characters and their actions. This also helps with the visual gags as well. I swear, I was in tears thanks to some of these jokes. They even redid the intro using this smoother style. They really didn't have to, but it's a very nice touch. What didn't get a shiny new coat of paint is the music, sadly. Besides a handful of new songs, most being Retsuko singing heavy metal, we don't get anything added to the playlist, except an extremely slow version of the wedding song in the background once in a while. I still like the wild antics of the office noises and such, but I was really hoping for some new stuff. All in all, I absolutely love this season, but it does have a few hiccups along the way. Still, I highly suggest watching this for yourselves. With that being said, I feel like I really need to go more into depth with this arc of the show than my last review. There was quite a bit that I had to mull over in my head and give a deeper thought about. That and the emotional roller coaster ride of these characters was far more exciting and a bit more realistically depressing. So you better not drink that milk, cause we're heading into spoiler territory. Not only do we learn more about the previous individuals in the series, but several newly introduced characters as well. And since the season is highly focused on these new individuals, I need to talk more about them the most. Starting with the first episode, we finally meet Retsuko's mother. She got a small part in the shorts, so she was destined to come into the show eventually. Just like in the miniseries, she is belligerent, argumentative, hypocritical, and your typical mother knows best. But she's even worse because she gets far more airtime. Not to mention she's pretty old-fashioned, believing that her daughter should be married off to the first good man she can find. She's so archaic. Maybe underneath all that fur is a scaly raptor in disguise.
Clever girl.
Mama Red is also devious and underhanded, using tricks to get her daughter dating potential suitors. For example, she bullies her till she accepts arranged dates and even photoshops men's faces to look more handsome and attractive. God, she's just a real piece of work. She's like having a horsefly stuck in your eardrum. A bzzz of arrogance and self-righteousness stuck inside your head, biting you painfully with her sharp tongue. All for the sake of her living out her dream through her daughter. She at first ticked me off with her obsessive nature and awful manners, but after seeing through her little tricks, can actually become a bit funny. Usually cause it's at the expense of Retsuko, or how she thinks that the same trick will work not just twice, but 3 or 4 times. This mother even went as far as to call her daughter to say that a house got robbed near Retsuko's apartment and then snuck into her house. This scared her so bad our protagonist ended up calling the cops before finding out who it was. Upon questioning how she even got in, she openly admitted stealing and copying her daughter's key. That's not just 1, but 2 felonies, lady. What kind of psycho do you have to be to pull that type of stunt?
I'm sorry, did you need a compliment?
Nah, she ain't that bad. However, there is somebody that's almost as bad as Beatrice, and this came as a surprise to me. Meet Anai, or Doug, in the terrible subtitles from the shorts. In that series, he was an uptight, excitable rookie that tried his best even if it made problems for others. They even set it up to be the same in the actual show. But they really pulled a fast one on us. Not only is he antsy about doing things right, he's highly defensive. Anybody he thinks is attacking him personally or trying to make him do anything outside what he perceives as his job, he gets incredibly aggressive with. So I know what you're wondering. What does this guy do to those who cross his path? It's time to become a Fortnite streamer! No, even worse. He asks for an apology. No, wait, come back! You haven't even heard the full story yet. He wants an apology saying exactly what the perpetrator did wrong, in writing or voice recordings. Do you already see the issue here? There's a problem with this that's pretty glaring, and that is context is everything. Anybody's words can easily be twisted around and used against them. If you have been on the internet for any extended amount of time, you'll understand that pretty well. What Anai is doing here is setting himself up with defensive blackmail measures in order to frame his co-workers if they get in his way. What's really scary is his reaction to these perceived offenses. His eyes roll up into the back of his head and bug out. He begins biting his lower lip and mumbles menacingly, and even goes as far as screaming ferociously at others. It's great that people are getting defensive against corporations and bad bosses, because I guarantee you that 9 times out of 10, these businesses do not care about you or your wants and needs. However, he takes it way too far and extreme. He's so hypocritical with his anti-abusive measures, he ends up using them to further exploit his fellow employees and even his superiors. People like him need a more tender touch than what earlier generations receive nowadays. A gentle nudge in the right direction can work much better than a slap to the face. I personally can say that I can get very frustrated with the way certain bosses act or how companies act as a whole. But you can't attack people the way Anai does. Innocent people can get caught in the crossfire using a system like this. And they do in the show. Except Tan. He had that coming. Not to mention, using this could come back to haunt you. Messing with the wrong individual might get you hurt, like losing your job, or perhaps getting jumped in the parking lot. People tend to remember being screwed over, and ruining somebody's life work has resulted in some unsavory problems.
You might get cold, cocked.
I've had to deal with this type of nasty defensive attitude all my life, so everything he does rubs me the wrong way. There would be no way I could put up with something like this. Threats only tick me off. When I first watched him, my initial thought was to slap some sense into that brain. Denying the account. I can't totally blame Anai though. Sure, he's almost psychotic in the way he handles things, but look at what Retsuko had to deal with in season 1. There are tons of cases like this in real life. Not to mention, our modern day society is scary. Between losing our livelihood, the constant news barraging us nearly every single day, and the existential crisis as we grow old, just to name a few things. I'd even hazard saying that he was hurt going through school or college. You don't get that defensive and scared of people unless you have quite the harsh history. It was said in an interview with Retsuko that the stories were based on real life, which makes me believe that Anai is a social commentary on the Gen Z and the newer workers joining the force. More and more we're seeing this type of person cropping up, using the legal system tactics. I believe that Retsuko wrote him this way on purpose to show the 3 generations of workers, from Gen X to Millennials and ending with Gen Z. Each one has a different mindset on how they view life and do their work. Speaking of Gen X, I should talk a little bit about director Tan. We saw a bit of a change in him at the end of season 1, but we see a far bigger difference here. He was more of a tyrant and main antagonist back then, but now he's more comical and understanding. By no right is he a good guy. But Tan can be seen giving wisdom more often than before, and actually connecting with Retsuko. He observes and contemplates her and the events that are happening around her, choosing his words carefully to warn her of what's to come from dating her new boyfriend, Tadano. And he was right on the money, as we all know what happened there. Unlike how he normally dumps all his thoughts and work on her as soon as it comes to mind, he seems to genuinely care about our protagonist more than we first thought. We even see him sighing when he hears the news in the tabloids and how nasty they talk about her. Later on, he explains to Retsuko that the reason he keeps going with his crummy job is for his family. That it's his wife and daughters that push him forward and give his life meaning. If this man was as cold and bigoted as we thought originally, he wouldn't have gone out of his way to even help her. I believe that Ton doesn't hate women as much as he lets on, and hates the wishy-washy behavior of Retsuko, which I can totally understand, as her constant emotionally fluxing attitude and her questionable life ideals can even irritate me. Moving on from Ton to the second new character that stole the show, not to mention several shippers' hearts. Why is it always with Haida though? Is none other than the adorable donkey known as Tadano. He is our love interest of the season, much like how Buzz Aldrin over here was for the first. This time, however, he was given a lot more time to build up his character compared to the Prince of Derp, gradually growing the relationship instead of instantly hooking up like last time. Not only does this give more insight on the inner workings of these two, but it does show that Retsuko has learned her lesson from last time with her instant infatuation. Somewhat. What is it with this family wanting Retsuko to get married within a month of knowing a guy anyways? And what an interesting character he is. When we first meet him, we get this impression that he's a bit of a strange one. He comes off as chill, relaxed, and a go-with-the-flow type of guy in his mid-20s. He reminded me of a college student that really hasn't grown up enough to take things seriously, since he has problems passing the written part of the driving test and has issues sleeping, as he's shown constantly yawning over and over. However, I was very wrong on my first judgment. It turns out the reason he is so odd is due to his high intelligence as well as his ideology, and being stinking rich. He hates how society treats people and wants them to be able to do what they want to do. He even plans on changing civilization and the economy so others can live happier lives. He's quite the pipe dreamer, huh? Is what I would say if he didn't have an IQ of 200 and has a technological marvel of an idea to change things. Meet Neo, an artificial intelligence built and programmed by Tadano. He can talk, respond to questions, learn from social networking, and he can drive a vehicle safely. All the while eerily reminding me of HAL 4000. Skynet's just a little too close to home for my liking. I shouldn't say that though, because Anai is not that far from reality. There is a supercomputer named Watson that has the same basic abilities to learn and grow as an AI. He was so smart he even beat the greatest champions of Jeopardy by a landslide. That's probably where the inspiration for Inyo came from. Where the creators of Watson wanted to use him as a huge database for answering questions, and currently is being used to help cancer research, Tadano wants to use his artificial intelligence to create a world that uses machines to do most of the work for people. These jobs consist of, but are not limited to, driving, flying, manual labor, and even office jobs, like accounting. This in turn frees people from their careers to allow them to do what they want instead of being trapped in a position they hate. He does understand the bottleneck of society and its need for money, so he wants to change how that works too. Skipping the many holes this plan has because I could make an entire video on what could go wrong here, I want to discuss Retsuko and Tadano and their relationship on a whole. As I said earlier, these two had a lot more time to bond. They start out as a B-plot during Anai's reign of terror that gradually turns into the A-plot later on in the season. This couple was rather cute to watch, but as I predicted, it didn't last. Part of it was due to the fact that Haida keeps getting built up as a future boyfriend. And before you throw the Christmas special in my face, remember what Retsuko said after being asked out. I'm just not ready for something like that at the moment. She had just gotten out of her first relationship, which had turned out to be a disaster, and couldn't really handle dating another guy at the time. Retsuko had even said that she likes him. She had never made going out with Haida an impossibility. Going back to Tadano, the major reason was due to their incompatibility that I knew that it was going to end up breaking apart. I know some of you out there might disagree with me, and I even saw some posts out there that said they were the perfect ship, that it was only due to Tadano unwilling to settle down and get married. That and the high debate. This is more of a final straw that broke the camel's back. No offense to any camels out there. Retsuko is an average girl with simple needs and simple wants like decent meals, a good love life, her employers and peers not treating her like trash. On the other hand, Tadano is far from simple once you delve deeper into his personality. He is ambitious and driven. And not only did the animators show this, but the voice actor makes sure to drive the point home whenever he talks about changing the world or whenever he talks about his AI. He feels so strongly about this, he doesn't even live in a house. He eats, sleeps, and works from his limousine. He even has the computer's hardware in that limo and travels from place to place in order to talk to business leaders and other bigwigs to sell this idea. Don't get me wrong, he is a great guy and has quite the big heart. Heck, even I would date him just for his personality. Why are most of the best guys always fictional? But because of Tadano's passion, he can't be tied down. Marriage takes a lot of planning, time, and effort to get off the ground. Well, at least money was no object with Tadano. Then add the fact that Tadano would have to live with Retsuko in a house. Because if you think she was gonna settle living in a car for the rest of her life, you got another thing coming. Then he would be constantly having to go back and forth to their home to take care of his wife, taking on more responsibilities than I truly think he's ready for. Retsuko didn't even understand his logic behind his passion, questioning on how his plans would work and how he could change all of society. He was in the same boat too, not able to grasp her more down-to-earth thinking. He couldn't even fathom how normal roads work, constantly failing the driver's written test over and over to the point he needed her to explain it all to him. It was pretty much foreshadowing at how differently they viewed the world. To top it off, Tadano doesn't even believe in the old world thoughts of marriage, considering it an outdated system. I know that opposites attract, but these two are just never really gonna see eye to eye. Even the show visualizes this at the end. Retsuko is driving a truck, showing how grounded she thinks of the world. Meanwhile, Tadano is flying his jet plane, indicating how his mind is always up in the clouds, dreaming of his goals. These two are heading in opposite directions too, a sign that they are moving on with their lives as they pursue their own objectives. I find this really depressing. Seeing something like this fall apart does a number on my heart, leaving me forlorn and wistful. Watching these two struggle to be together while holding on to their own ideals was like watching a car crash in slow motion. You just know what's coming, but it isn't pretty. What bothers me the most is how abrupt the show ends. In the last episode, Retsuko gets cut off from her last words.
I had so much.
Then boom, credits! That doesn't seem like an animation error to me. Retsuko was just telling her friend how she likes her positive views of the world, and she tries to adapt this to her own way of thinking, trying to have an optimistic outlook on her very recent breakup. But due to the sudden end of the show, it's as if they were about to put a final nail in the ship's coffin, but suddenly somebody stole the Undertaker's hammer. I think this implies that she still might be very depressed about this, and it could indicate that we haven't seen the last of Tadano. It's possible that he might come back to be with Retsuko, but only to find that she is dating a new guy, causing a love triangle. This would be a good way of exploring exes who bounce back into one's life, asking for forgiveness or a second chance. I could see Aggretsuko doing this with a mature and realistic theme and not making everybody involved a complete a-hole, like most shows do with this concept. Anyways, my final thoughts on Aggretsuko? This script changed almost everything about how we viewed the show. Season 1 gave us a view of somebody trying to deal with office life and how we could relate to her hardships. In Season 2, the characters and storytelling become deeper, and giving Retsuko a reality check about her goals in life from the first chapter. She wanted a boyfriend that would take her away from this crappy job and allow her to live a life as a housewife. She was given a perfect, loving, and rich boyfriend as she wished, but found out that sacrificing her true reason she wanted these goals wouldn't make her happy. That being marriage and kids. That she would end up living miserably and lying to Tadano and herself that this is what she wanted. My biggest problem with the show, however, is that I can see a formula forming, making me rather nervous for Season 3. The formula goes like this. Retsuko has trouble at work with her co-workers, resolves that issue with friends halfway through the season, gets a love interest, dates love interest, goes goo-goo for love interest. Finally, she ends up having troubles with her lover, and on the last episode, she dumps them. I'd be pretty disappointed if Retsuko does this in the next season. There's only so many times you can pull this off without it becoming redundant. Other than that, gay for Haida, but Tadano for life. Boom! This is Mr. Skids.